The 2023 NFL season is behind us. It's time to revisit tiers for Dynasty and talk about players that should start getting somewhat lumped together in terms of value. So before we get into it, though, I have a quick disclaimer. I'm recording this during Week 18 on Sunday, so stats are not going to be fully up to date for Week 18. I don't think it really matters all that much. We have everything we need from weeks 1 to 17. So that being said, we got 6 tiers to cover, 27 different wide receivers. We'll talk about most of them. So let's get into it. Tier 1 is, I think, an obvious one for the most part. Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, those two have to be a part of tier 1. When you look coming into this season, it was just those two. It was a two-man race on who the best wide receiver in the NFL is. You fast forward to the end of 2023, that tier has to grow. Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think those are the 4 best wide receivers for fantasy looking over the next 3 to 5 years. And you might say, well, not CeeDee Lamb, maybe not Amon-Ra St. Brown. But when you look at the career highs for these players, for target share and points per game, the two main things I'm going to talk about a lot today, they are right up there with Justin Jefferson. They're ahead of Ja'Marr Chase. So let's just dive into it really quick. Justin Jefferson, his career high target share, 29.9%. His highest points per game, 21.7 points per game. Okay, let's go to Ja'Marr Chase, 29.3% target share, 18.6 points per game. You go to CeeDee Lamb now, career high target share of 28.7%, career high points per game, 21.8. And when you go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, career high target share of 30% with 20.3 points per game as his career high. So again, these guys all very similar in age, either 24 or 25 years old, heading into 2024 at least. All of them have very similar production. It is apparent they are here to stay. They are not going anywhere. And CeeDee Lamb, honestly, for my money, I'm taking him over Ja'Marr Chase at this point. Just because he's proven he is every bit as good as Ja'Marr Chase. He has Dak Prescott. Like, the situation is comparable. Dak Prescott is a fantastic passer, just like Joe Burrow, except you're getting a little bit more volume, and I think that is raising CeeDee Lamb's ceiling here. You want to take Ja'Marr Chase? Sure. I don't really care. I'm not going to debate you this high up in our tier rankings. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, he may not be flashy, like the crazy low average depth of target, 7.8 yards. For some people, disqualifying to put him in a tier with Jefferson, Chase, and Lamb. I don't think it is. The production is solid. The target earning is elite. Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he needs to be ranked with these top guys right now. Switching over to tier 2, this one's short. It's just A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was on the cusp, I think, of entering tier 1 in the middle of this season. If he does not slow down the stretch, I think you're looking at tier 1 being all 5 of these guys. But A.J. Brown right now has not proven he's capable of producing like Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown and the like in tier 1 for an entire season. Again, a lot of that has to do with the situation and the offense he's in, right? It's naturally a slightly lower volume offense than these other guys playing. That is for sure a factor. And then the other piece, which it's not a huge difference, but he's about to turn 27 years old, right? When you're looking at guys that are 24, 25, out-earning him in targets or putting up similar marks and then out-producing him by 1 to 2 points per game, that's where the tier break kind of has to be, I think. And really, we're nitpicking because A.J. Brown's fantastic, but the elevated age, again, only 27, but still, the elevated age, the lack of 20 point per game seasons, all of these things, I think, keep him just outside of that top tier. Not going to argue that he is a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty. That's a very obvious statement, I think, at this point. But if you're trying to go up from A.J. Brown to one of these guys, you're going to have to add. I don't think they are a 1-to-1 in value like some of the top players might be. The next 3 tiers I think are interesting, right? Tier 3, think of them like elite and young wide receivers. Tier 4 is going to be a single player. And then tier 5 is massive. Tier 5 is 14 different guys. So let's just stick with tier 3 first. For me, it's Garrett Wilson, it is Chris Olave, and it is Puka Nacua. Those 3 guys right now I think are differentiating themselves from the other young and very talented wide receivers in the NFL. Garrett Wilson, 23 years old with a 31% target share. And yes, I understand The production has not come with that level of targets. I do think he gets a slight pass because he's playing with some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Some of the worst quarterbacks I have ever seen. You're talking about Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Jesus. And then go back last year. You have Mike White. You have Joe Flacco, who, elite, all the credit in the world to Joe Flacco. Love the dude. And you had like 3-place Aaron Rodgers in 2023. It really could not be worse for Garrett Wilson. So assuming Aaron Rodgers is back next year, I think we finally get that like true traditional Garrett Wilson breakout season. And he's so damn young, and he's just so damn talented. He is the top of tier 3 for me. Puka Nacua. Puka has to be this high. And there will be people that say, but Justin, he's a day 3 wide receiver. You always hate day 3 wide receivers. That's true. I absolutely do. But what I don't hate is day 3 wide receivers that put up historic seasons. Like a guy that is going to, again, I haven't seen him play yet on week 18, but should break the record for catches for a rookie and receiving yards. Once you put up that level of production, where you were drafted is so unbelievably irrelevant. It does not matter. I got burned on Amon-Ra St. Brown because I did the same kind of nonsense. Well, he didn't produce and everybody was healthy and yada, 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 right? You could do the same thing with Puka and Cooper Kupp. He was obviously better without Cooper Kupp. That doesn't matter. He has still been really damn good with Cooper Kupp. So even though he's with Stafford, and Stafford might retire, I don't care. The talent is there. The talent is obvious. Puka is an elite wide receiver and a locked and loaded top 10 wide receiver at minimum in Dynasty. And to close out the tier, it's Chris Olave. And Chris Olave, again, right, he's not living up to the hype. I don't think he has produced like people wanted him to produce in year 2. But the peripherals are still solid. He still remains an elite wide receiver in terms of route running, per reception perception. His target share, 26%. He is 17th in the league in average depth of target, which means he is getting used down the field consistently still and is still earning a massive number of targets. Like that high volume with the high average depth of target is usually fantasy gold. What makes it not fantasy gold sometimes is if you have somebody like Derek Carr throwing you the ball. If he gets any kind of quarterback upgrade, Chris Olave is a true bona fide star. Everything points to that being the case. It's just getting the situation correct. And that's always going to be the case with a lot of wide receivers, right? I think DJ Moore, a guy we'll talk about, is a really, really good example. Chris Olave is having a better start to his career than DJ Moore, but like those two guys, I think are very similar in terms of overall talent. If Chris Olave gets an elite quarterback at some point, or a quarterback that is willing to just force feed him, like it's gonna be different. Chris Olave deserves to be in this tier, even though the production has not necessarily followed just yet. Now, tier number 4, I mentioned it's one guy. It's very similar to tier number 2. It's Tyreek Hill. I mean, you know who it's going to be here. He is the best wide receiver potentially in the NFL, potentially the last like 10 years, it seems. But he's 30. Like, he is still going to be 30 years old. He's going to slow down. He's only going to continue to drop in rankings, right? Because as guys get older, this is naturally going to happen. If I could pivot off of Tyreek Hill for a Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Puka, or anybody above him, I'm doing that immediately. Not because I don't think Tyreek is just an absolute superstar, but because he's 30. And when we're playing Dynasty and we're looking across these 3 to 5 year windows, expecting Tyreek Hill to be elite at the end of that window is just it's a bad decision. It is a bad bet to make. This has nothing to do with what I think of Tyreek as a player. Like I said, probably one of the best to ever do it. He's going to probably fall further and further by the time the year starts, right? Marvin Harrison Jr. will be ahead of Tyreek Hill. Malik Neighbors, by the end of his rookie year, could be ahead of Tyreek Hill. Rome Odunze, after his rookie year, could be ahead of Tyreek Hill. He's just going to continue to fall. So he's a sinking asset. If you have him as a legit contender, I fully understand not wanting to trade him. If you are not competing for a title right now, you have to get rid of Tyreek Hill. That's just a little bit of advice outside of tier stuff. But again, he's in his own tier because there's no one like him. There's nobody like Tyreek Hill. Like all of the other older players have fallen off significantly more than Tyreek Hill has because he had no fall off. So that's why they are all in tier 6 rather than up in tier 4 with Tyreek Hill. Now into tier 5. And I think this is the most interesting tier for Dynasty because it is loaded. It is a loaded tier with 14 to 15 guys that all carry a ton of value and are all either really damn good or really damn young and have flashed freakish upside. That is what this tier is. The best value, realistically, is if you can get a pick attached to any of these players within a tier to move up or down, I think it's probably worth it. So keep that in mind as we go through all these names. Even if some guys are higher or lower than you think, it's fine. This is why we do tiers, because ranking guys this close is very, very difficult to do. So to kick it off at the start of the tier, it's Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk has had a phenomenal season, and he's flown a little bit under the radar because Deebo Samuel's been a freak as well. Like, Deebo Samuel's been absolutely spectacular. But Brandon Aiyuk puts up a 26% target share. He is 13th in average depth of target. And just like Chris Olave, a high average depth of target with a high target share is just fantastic. High volume, consistent volume is usually fantasy gold. And it's been that way for most of this season. And I really do think Brandon Aiyuk's the best, like, traditional, true wide receiver on this roster. Deebo's been great. He's been fantastic this year. Brandon Aiyuk is a better true wide receiver than Deebo is. I don't think you're going to get a ton of argument. And when you look at the reception perception numbers, it paints the same picture. 91st percentile versus man. 89th versus zone. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL in a perfect system with a good quarterback. Regardless of what you actually think about Brock Purdy, he has been very good for fantasy purposes, for his wide receivers, for his pass catching options. Brandon Aiyuk is good. He honestly has a chance to push up into tier 3, I think, next year. But we need to see a little bit more. We need to see what happens as this offense ages and Brock Purdy continues to grow. 3 more in this tier we'll kind of lump together because we've talked about them a ton, right? DeVonta Smith, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf. All very, very good wide receivers. A lot of them are probably kind of stuck where they are. I think DK ends up being a really, really good value. DeVonta Smith is always going to be an elite wide receiver 2 in fantasy with wide receiver 1 upside. But as long as A.J. Brown's there and Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, he's going to have trouble jumping tiers. And T. Higgins, he brings questions. Where does he go in free agency? Can he stay healthy? The talent's clear. It's the injury concerns and the uncertainty in situation that kind of keeps him down here. The other player you may have expected to hear is probably Jaylen Waddle lumped in with them. And I do think he's lumped in. Like, I think Jaylen Waddle, though, is behind all 3 of them. Jaylen Waddle is about to be 25 years old. It feels like he's younger, but going to be 25 years old, coming off of a 23% target share this year and a 21.6% target share the year before alongside Tyreek Hill. He's second fiddle. Like, he is clear second fiddle, right? Not like Smith has been. Higgins has even been, I think, better than Jaylen Waddle has. And realistically, he's not an elite route runner either. Like, the speed is tantalizing. The playmaking is electric. In the offense that he's in, it's perfect. But as just a true wide receiver, 58th percentile versus man, 78th versus zone, 62nd versus press. Now, that's not an ideal reception perception profile. Again, in this offense, it matters much less because Mike McDaniel basically guarantees you're going to get open at some point. So Waddle is a guy that could be a top 10 wide receiver, could also be just inside the top 20. I think he's just very difficult to rank. He's very difficult, I think, to get excited about because by the time Tyreek Hill, I think, really phases out, maybe 2 years, Jaylen Waddle is 26, 27 years old. It's getting tougher and tougher to get really, really damn excited about him. But again, he's still, I think, technically wide receiver 14 in tier 4 or in tier 5. So he's fine, but not a player I'm trying to buy up, I think, like some of the others. After Waddle comes in Drake London, who I love. I love Drake London, but this year has not been what I expected it to be. And I think this offseason, I talked about Drake London has a path to be in that tier 3 with Garrett Wilson and those guys. I think there's a clear path there. It didn't come close this year. I'm not going to really ding him a ton. I did drop him down in ranks from the start of the year. You know, coming off of that 29% target share, it was obvious to me at least to say Drake London's going to be a freak. He regressed. He regressed this year in terms of target share, down to 23%. The whole situation was terrible, but his target share still drops down from freakish levels as a rookie. You have a ton of uncertainty entering the offseason. Who's the head coach? Hope to God it's not Arthur Smith. Who's the quarterback? Maybe it's Justin Fields. And this is, it's a scary proposition for a guy ranked this high with so many uncertainties. But what we can fall back on, he's going to be 22 years old next year, insanely young. And his route running as a rookie was fantastic. 71% versus man. You want them to be over 70%. 77 versus zone. Get right in line with Jaylen Waddle, who is a different type of wide receiver entirely. And 69% versus press, which needs to be higher with his skill set, with his play style. He has to be better there. So there's a lot of good and there's bad with Drake London. So this is where you just have to kind of figure out, what do you want to do with this level of uncertainty? Because there's a lot going on. I like Drake London a lot. I'm going to continue to buy prior to any situation changes, because I think we see a massive jump in value after that. So it's just kind of trying to buy low before things go sideways. And after London comes a rookie from the 2023 class. To me, it's JSN. He is still the wide receiver 2 in this class. Comes in with a 17.7% target share, and Jordan Addison was at 18.1%. So Addison edges him out there, but also Addison did not have Justin Jefferson for the majority of the season. JSN has played alongside Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, who we have ranked ahead of him. So earning that level of target share, I think, is almost, I view it as a win. Like 17 is the baseline of where I want you to be. Being able to finish ahead of that with the competition he went up against is huge. I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba, if he does not fracture his wrist to start the year and is basically playing, one-handed to some extent the first 4 weeks of the season, I think we view him differently. I think he's higher than wide receiver 16. Since the bye, since his wrist got healthy, he's on a 17-game pace of 72 receptions, 850 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That's solid. That's a solid rookie year, again, alongside very, very good wide receivers. He was the wide receiver 1 last year for me. He's now the wide receiver 2 because Puka's a freak. So I'm good to roll with JSN moving forward, even with how strong this entire class turned out to be with Addison, Flowers, Dell, and a lot of guys behind him that are in this tier. So JSN, I like him. I can understand why people have him lower. I still have him this high. Next on the list, it is a guy I have loved for a very long time. It is Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman, going to be 26 years old, pulling in a 30% target share, averaging over 16 points per game this year. He took the lead. Michael Pittman took the step forward that we have been waiting and predicting for 3 years. And again, only going to be 26 years old next year. He is going to develop into a consistent, or has developed, I should say, into a consistent, rock-solid, high-end wide receiver 2 that just soaks up targets. That is exactly what you want. He is just this. You can't really put him higher. You sure as hell can't put him lower, because what kind of production and route running do you want to see from him if not this? He's always graded out exceptionally well in reception perception. That has always been the reason we've been high on him. And we finally saw it come true with Gardner Minshew of all people, right? It wasn't Phillip Rivers that unlocked him. It wasn't Matt Ryan. It wasn't Anthony Richardson. It might have been, but it wasn't. It was Gardner Minshew. Now the question, or the concern next year is, what does it look like with Anthony Richardson under center? Does he get the same kind of volume? Does this offense pass nearly as much? The gut feeling is no. The volume's going to drop. So maybe this ends up being Michael Pittman's best season. But again, if he's going to continue to pull in a 30% plus target share, 15 to 16 points per game feels realistic just on volume alone, especially in your full PPR leagues. So I'm still a Pittman guy. Love the dude as a contender. I think he is a great trade target because he's just rock solid. Will he be a true, game-breaking difference maker? I don't know if he ever gets there, especially in that offense. But they got a damn good head coach, a fun quarterback prospect, and he is a clear-cut wide receiver. And after Pittman, it's DJ Moore, another guy who finally took the step forward that we have been waiting for. Now, DJ Moore about to be 27 years old, so got a year on Pittman. But I think DJ Moore is set up better long-term with potential situation, right? He doesn't have Shane Steichen, which I think is probably bad because Shane Steichen's incredible. Regardless what you think about the pass to Tyler Goodson, Shane Steichen's great. DJ Moore, this season though, was better than Michael Pittman with his starting quarterback, right? When DJ Moore had Justin Fields, 19.6 points per game, a 27.5% target share, freakish usage, and fantastic production. And if the Bears keep Justin Fields, okay, well, that's great for DJ Moore. He did fantastic with Justin Fields. Or if the Bears move on from Fields, please God, send him to Atlanta with Drake London. But if they move on from Justin Fields, you have Caleb Williams. That's the assumption. Caleb Williams is a better passer right now than Justin Fields is. At least from everything we've seen, everything everybody says, that is where he is. That is going to be a good thing for DJ Moore. He's going to continue to be the best wide receiver on the roster, even if they bring in a guy with their second first overall pick. DJ Moore is going to be the clear-cut and obvious one. He is a nuanced route runner that is open, can track the deep ball, does everything well. DJ Moore is elite. He is a top 12, I think, real-life wide receiver. But at 27 years old, with ambiguity, it's harder to move him higher on this list, I think. I think if DJ Moore is still 25 and doing this, he's probably in tier 3. But at 27, we're dropping him just a little bit. After DJ Moore, this is where I think we get into all of the rookies from this year. So think Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice. All of them are in this tier. And for me, if I'm putting money on guys that I think that will be the best next season, I think Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, and then Jordan Addison. That's the way I believe it's going to end up shaking out. All of them have had fantastic rookie seasons. All of them meet the marks you're looking for in terms of peripherals. They're over a 17% target share, right? They are operating with good quarterbacks. They have good offensive schemes. They have everything you want. So I don't want to get into each and every single one of these. We'll do that plenty of times this offseason. But just know, all of them belong in this tier. Some of them definitely have a case to be higher. Tank Dell is one for sure. If he doesn't land on IR and isn't dealing with an injury heading into next season, I think Tank Dell is probably higher as well. It's an absolutely loaded rookie class from 2023 that a lot of people weren't that excited about, and they proved basically everybody wrong. It's one of the better classes we've seen in a long time, I think, at least post their first season. And to close out the tier, guys, we have Deebo Samuel, who is still there, and then Nico Collins, the other Texans wide receiver. Nico Collins, the only concern with him is the target share, right? Under 22%, with Tank Dell missing a lot of the year. You want that to be higher in a year 3 guy. That could be the peak. But again, if the peak of Nico Collins is 22% from CJ Stroud, putting up a couple monster games a year with 16 points per game, like, that's perfectly fine. I think that is warranted being in this tier. He's going to be entering year 4. Again, he's alongside Tank Dell. They might get competition in the first or second round of the NFL draft, so it's definitely something we need to watch. But Nico Collins looks great. I mean, he really does look fantastic. So that's where he is there. And then Deebo is 27 years old, runs the ball a lot. He's great after the catch. It doesn't translate year to year. We saw it last season. It wasn't as good. So what do you do with Deebo? He's obviously talented. If you're a contender, it's great to hold him. He's very difficult to trade as well because people don't really buy into Deebo. Either they love him or they are fully out. I think Deebo deserves to be in this tier. He doesn't need to be in tier 6 with the other guys I'm going to talk about. But it's tough to move him higher with the age and the inconsistency in the play style. And tier 6, we have 3 guys I want to talk about, and then we are going to wrap it up here. Number 1, Stefon Diggs at the top of tier 6 here. Closed out the year just horribly. I mean, was a star wide receiver to start the year. Was in the Tyreek Hill tier up in tier 4 earlier. But the way he ends the season, turning 31 next year, he's just gonna continue to drop. I mean, he's talented. Stefon Diggs is great. But you can't be that inconsistent or that bad to close the year and turn 31 and hold your place in rankings. It just doesn't work that way. The same goes for DeVonta Adams, who really, really good close of the year, but he just turned 31 years old. You don't know where he's playing, and he was inconsistent this year. And yes, he had Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy G throwing the ball, so that's a big part of it. Maybe he lands, fingers crossed, in Kansas City and has a great resurgence at the end of his career and has, 2 years of superstardom. Very well could do it. I'm not putting a 31-year-old wide receiver higher that isn't coming off of, a top 3 season like we've seen before. And Cooper Kupp, 31 years old, was obviously started the year injured, was never fully right, I think, early. Doesn't put up Cooper Kupp numbers. A lot of that has to do with Puka Nacua being as good as he is. But about to be 31 years old, losing a little bit of favor with Matthew Stafford because there's an elite option alongside him now. The overall ceiling for Cooper Kupp is a notch or two lower. Again, if he had done what Tyreek Hill did this year, he's up in tier 4. He doesn't do it, so he's lumped in with Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, and then himself. Like, those are great win now trade targets if you're a true contender, because I don't think these guys just disappear. But I think the days of them being top 3 wide receivers is likely over, which is why I'm not going to put them much higher. All right, guys, that is it. That is our updated wide receiver tiers for our first 27 wideouts. So if you guys have questions, you have comments, drop them down below. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.